coworkers, because that's the only way that we are going to move that forward, that idea forward, that we're all here, we're all doing this work, and we all want to go home at the end of the day. The connections that we have in our life are really important. And like I said, friends and family. So friends and family are paramount. I was in the talk about time earlier, and he was talking about the big rocks and then the little rocks in the sand. I don't know how many of you were there, but he was saying, you fill a jar with big rocks, and that's all the things that really matter to you in your life, your family, your faith, trees, tacos, whatever it is, whatever your big rocks are. You put those in the jar, and then you get the little rocks. That's the stuff that work and other stuff that you need to fill in, and then the sand that fills the jar totally, right? And that makes it so that it's actually full. Those big rocks, your family, your friends, the people in your community that you care about, the teams you coach, the stores you frequent, where you spend your money in your community, like all of these connections, they all matter, and you are an important part of your community. And I don't just mean our industry. I'm not just talking about our industry right now. I'm talking about your entire community, your hometown, the town you used to live in, like all of these places where you have these connections. They make, you, and they make all the people around you. All of these connections. And whether you realize it or not, all of these people kind of depend on you in a way. Again, like even down to the stores you frequent in your hometown. Like you're part of their business plan. Your money coming in is important to them. Just every aspect of your life, you're connected to people, and you make a difference in people's lives, whether you realize it or not. And you make an impact in people's lives, whether you realize it or not, every day. And if you disappear from that, if you hurt yourself at work really badly and you're in the hospital, if you, God forbid, kill yourself, you're gone from those connections. And all of those people are affected. No matter if it's the lady at the bank teller, at the bank who remembers your name every day, that you come in to deposit checks from your company, and she knows to deposit in your business account. She's gonna miss you on some level if she hears you killed yourself by accident. That's a human connection. And I think that human connection gets lost in a lot of the discussion about safety culture that I've experienced in our industry. And I'm not trying to tell you guys how to do safety culture. I'm not trying to do nuts and bolts here. I'm just trying to say, I really want us to start getting back to that, or start to get to it in the first place. Maybe we never have, We, as arborists, have chosen a dangerous, we have chosen a hazardous profession. And it can be outright dangerous depending on who you're working with or what job you're on or whatever, because we all know that shit goes sideways. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. So that concept has really been striking home to me, is that every day I get out of bed and I choose to go climb a tree with a chainsaw dangling from a half-inch rope and doing all other manner of dangerous crap. And I make that choice every day, and at this point it doesn't even feel like a choice, right? It's like, this is my only marketable skill, this is all I've got going, it's tree work or nothing. I gotta make money, I gotta feed my kids. But every day I make that choice to go out there and do something that's hazardous and dangerous. I also need to take more responsibility for my actions because of all those connections I was talking about before. Because of how much all of those connections matter, because of how much I matter in the scheme of the lives of the people around me. And I don't say that to be conceited. I don't think I'm God's gift to arborists or husbands or fathers or anything. but I'm trying to acknowledge myself as a human that deserves that level of appreciation. And I'm trying to acknowledge all of you as humans who deserve that level of appreciation, whether we get along at work or not. I want you to get home at the end of the day. So we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to all these people around us to really let go of our ego, which is, in my experience, most of the resistance to safety culture is based in ego. I think that we get really caught up in how cool this job is, and how cool we look while we're doing it, and how tough we are, and how big a log we can lift. And most of this sounds like mostly guy stuff, but it's across the board to some level. I think a lot of it applies more to guys because we tend to be a little less emotionally available and a little less connected to the people around us, knowingly. That's a gross generalization, but I'm going with it. Anyway, so we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to all these people to really go this extra mile and put our money where our mouth is. And like you said, it's what happens when nobody's looking. So, who holds you accountable? Does your boss hold you accountable? Does your coworkers hold you accountable? They should. They should be holding you accountable, yes. But in that moment when you're alone, are you still doing the thing? Are you holding yourself accountable? Because that's really, again, that's where safety culture is rooted for me, in that moment where you're deciding to not make, pardon my language for any children or people who don't like swearing, but not make a fuck it cut. Not say it's going to take me too long to go settle on. Not say it's going to take me too long to two-hand this saw, to change my position in the tree and two-hand this saw. In those moments, I think it's really important to remember that you're connected to everybody around you. You're not alone. Even in that moment where it seems like it's a really hot day and I need to get down out of this tree, we're way behind time, the boss is pissed off, I can see his veins popping out from here. You're not alone in that moment. You are still connected to everybody in your life. And the decision that you are about to make affects everybody in your life, even if they're not saying anything with you. The things that really got me started thinking about this were, in the last couple of years I've had a lot going on, and I've been kind of checked out of this arborist community. I've been going through a divorce, and I've been dealing with some pretty severe depression, and been in some really dark places where I wasn't, I was at a company for 10 years, and I had become the safety guy at the company. And toward the end of that time, I was going through all this stuff, and I was not able to be the safety guy every day. And I was not able to be self-aware enough to take myself out of situations where I was not the right person to be doing something. I was in charge. I didn't always talk to my boss in the morning. So unless I am self-aware enough to take myself out of a situation that I could make unsafe by my attitude, there was no one really there to do it. I didn't have those conversations with my coworkers. I'm sure they knew something was going on, but all they knew was that I was grumpy and moving very quickly and trying to get through things fast. This all kind of culminated for me in a day when I had to go on a long drive to get to a job. It was probably an hour and a half drive there and back. So 3 hours of driving a day, which is awesome. And I didn't want to be at this job. I didn't want to do the job. I didn't like it. We had to lift. I hate lifts. Sorry, anybody lift companies or whatever. I just don't like them. I like trees. So I'm up in the lift, which stresses me out. I'd been having a fight with my ex-wife all night the night before, so I was stressed out there too. And we're behind a cop shop in southern Vermont, and there's poop everywhere. I don't know what origin, but it was just this terrible job. And I was having a terrible day. and a terrible month and a terrible week and all this stuff, and it culminated in me standing in this lift, and we had to remove a tree that was over here. I was up in the lift in it, and we were rigging into a tree across from it because I didn't want to smash stuff underneath. So we rig out this entire tree into a block on the other side on this tree that is over there. We're rigging everything over to it, all the brush. And then we get into the wood, and my best friend in the world, Kate, is working the ground for me. And I realized that we needed to have a rigging point in the tree that I was rigging out and a rigging point over there, and we were just going to dump and have two control lines drifting everything over. What I failed to think about was I had a block at the far rigging point, and I added a rig wrench at the near rigging point, which was fine for this first couple of pieces. But any of you familiar with a rig wrench know that you shouldn't dump big wood into it because it doesn't break very well in that situation. Kate wasn't familiar with the rig wrench, and I was in such a distant place that I didn't really think to have that conversation with her about how to rig this. Like, oh, maybe we should set a redirect in the ground. Yeah, everything will be fine in that case. Or maybe I should just take the lift over and grab the block and put it here, and we can rig off of that with cord or whatever. So I rigged a big chunk of wood into the rig wrench, basically, because that's what caught it at the butt. The tip was caught by the other thing, but the butt caught that, and all that weight transferred to Kate's shoulders. She hadn't run the rig wrench before, and it didn't tear anything, I don't think. But her shoulder that was at least a year ago. Kate doesn't really climb trees that much anymore. Her shoulder is still effed up. She has PT all the time. She doesn't do tree work as a job anymore. Is that all because of that incident? No, not absolutely. There's various other factors. But the fact remains, and this is something that I really struggled to come to terms with. The fact remains is that I hurt my very best friend in the world, someone who's been there with me through all this dark shit that I just mentioned. I hurt her in a way that made it so that she couldn't do something that she really loves to do. And that sucks. And, I'm really glad that it was that kind of situation where she got hurt, and that sucks, but I didn't kill her, and I didn't kill myself, and all this stuff. We all made it home at the end of the day, but it got me thinking about what if that was a higher stakes situation, What if I had showed up to work that day in that state of mind, and I dropped a tree on Kate, or dropped a piece that hit her and broke her brain. I don't know. It could have been much worse. And it kind of got me started thinking about okay, well, how do you prevent that, right? And one way is I need to be self-aware enough to say, I'm having a shitty day. I can't be here, or I can't be up in the tree. I gotta walk, or something, some way to change. I need to be self-aware enough in myself that I am comfortable enough with myself and the people around me that I can say, hey guys, I can't do this today. We need to find a different route. And the other way to prevent that is, again, for me to be more connected to the people around me, so that they are comfortable enough to say, hey Matt, how do you do it? You think you're moving a little quick? Can we slow down for a second? Can we take a 10-minute break? Can we talk about what we're about to do? Because we were in a situation where I was the only one in charge. And I was like, no, we're going to do it this way. You'll be fine on the rig wrench. It's really easy. No worries. And nobody was in a position to really question me. And nobody felt comfortable to question me. And so what I've been thinking about is and talking to friends about and trying to wrap my head around is how we get to that place where we're comfortable enough to have that. And maybe some of you already have that if you're working with friends and family and loved ones, and maybe you're all on top of it, and awesome, more power to you. Again, I'm not trying to, I don't think I'm trying to change anybody's mind totally right now. I'm just trying to have a conversation about these other he does a great thing with his employees, where every morning when they come in, he gives them a hug, and he says, "How are you?" And not just like, "Hey, how you doing?" But like, he looks at them, "How are you?" And you get an answer. He gets an answer. And those moments are really hard to walk away from. They're hard to bullshit it. Because if somebody's looking at you in the eyes and asking you how you are, somebody that you see every day, I hope that you can give them a real answer. I'm not saying you need to give all of your employees hugs. You don't need to. That's totally up to you. But taking that moment to treat them like a human and acknowledge that they have a whole life outside of what we're doing today, and checking out how that life is going, and knowing what's going on with your coworkers, knowing what's making them itch, what's making them tick, whatever. I think that's how we're gonna get to that stage where you can prevent accidents like I had with my friend Kate, where you just are having open conversations about everything, and everybody's like, "Oh, you know, Matt's going through divorce, he's in a dark place, like, if he starts to look like he's going a little nuts, like, let's all talk to him, you know, let's all take him aside, or whatever, or I'll take him aside." But those conversations aren't easy to have. They're not conversations I grew up having. I don't know, maybe some of you did, again, like, everybody's different, but those emotionally connected conversations to people that aren't your immediate family, that's not in my training, you know, they didn't teach me that at the academy. I think those conversations are really important to moving safety forward. I'm definitely of the opinion that we're never going to get to this point where there's 0 deaths, or there's 0 injuries, right? Like, there's just not. It's not to me, that's not an achievable goal. But having conversations like this and acknowledging that there's more to safety than just remembering to wrap your thumb on the chainsaw, or, you know, remembering to ask how many rafts to take on the quarter app, or whatever the tasks that we're doing in the day are. There's so much more to that, and so much of it is wrapped up in these conversations that we are bending over backwards, or like literally killing ourselves not to have with people in our lives. These conversations that make us sweat, the conversations that we don't want to have, or don't know how to have, and don't know how to not get emotional in, or don't know how to be mad about, or whatever. Those are the conversations we need to be had. Because that's where you actually find out how somebody's doing in a deeper way than how you doing today, Bill. Good. And I don't know. I'm sure there are a lot of you out there, or a few of you out there, who are side-eyeing me throughout all of this, and I get that. This is not the talk that I thought I was going to give at TCIA when they told me I could give a talk at TCIA. But the time that ensued between getting a talk and today has made this the talk that, like, the only talk that I could give. And that's been a long process of evolution, right? I've been in this industry about 13 years, and, you know, when I started, I was in a forestry helmet and didn't know any better. I was climbing in a forestry helmet, it would get knocked off and leave on the ground. And I can trace the beginning of my evolution as an arborist to one class that I went to at the first conference that I went to. And it wasn't an aerial rescue class, but it was a first response class. And it was cool. They had firefighters come and package a guy who had been hit by a branch, and that was awesome. And then after the actual class had ended, this guy House, who, you know, he's kind of a celebrity in the arbor world, told a story. And it was a story about his friend who had cut his rope and fallen 40 feet out of a tree and hit an embankment and then fallen 40 more feet down the embankment. And the only reason he was alive, he was paraplegic. He'd lost all feeling below the neck. I don't remember the fellow's name, but he was a really nice guy. Jerry. His name was Jerry. Okay. He fell 40, and he was paraplegic, paralyzed from the neck down. The only reason he was alive was because he was wearing a helmet with a chin strap. And I had that moment of, oh, holy shit, I don't wear a helmet with a chin strap. So I changed it. And that was the first time that I actually noticed something I was doing that was unsafe and changed it. And as I've been wrapping my head around giving this talk, that story came back to me, because it's like those moments, like how many of you can trace your awakening as an arborist or whatever back to one moment or one person, one conversation? It's a pretty decent number of you. And I would guess that more of you out there have that moment too, even if you can't put a finger on it. Because, that's how memory works. You don't have to go all these together after a while. But it doesn't need to be in a classroom. That moment doesn't need to happen in a classroom. That moment can happen at the shop while you're drinking coffee. That moment can happen while one of you's on the ground and one of you's in a tree. It can happen because the groundie questioned the climber in what seemed like a stupid way at the time. I think we all need to be a bit more open to connection. And I think that is, for me, that connection, that love of the people around you that's the root of safety culture to me. And I just want that to be a part of the conversation, and I think it hasn't been, and I really don't like it, and I really think that it ignores a big part of us, of our humanity, and how to get people engaged in safety culture. I think we all need to just open up a little bit more. Definitely not going to make 45 minutes on this talk. So anyway, and that's my whole talk. That's my whole point. But yeah. Yeah. Right. So, sorry, was there something? So he was asking the culture at the company I was at the time, would it have been all right for me to say, hey man, I can't do this today, I'm sorry, I gotta bail? Would it have been all right with the employer and the other employees? That was the crux, right? I think ultimately, yes, it would have been, but I don't think I was self-aware enough to realize that was what I should have done. I wasn't in the headspace where I could make that call. But two, I think even if I had been in a space where I was like, oh man, I don't think I can do this today, I would have felt really stuck. I would have felt really responsible I would have had a hard time making that call myself. And I don't know if that's down to the culture. I mean, it is, but it's not. I wouldn't blame the employer. I would say that in reality, he had my back enough in the past that if I had called him and said, I can't do this, I'm going to do something dumb, he would have been like, oh, okay, I guess we'll figure something else out, But I don't think I was strong enough at that point to make that call. And I think that, honestly, in my experience looking at other tree companies, and I've seen quite a few of them at this point, I think my former employer is actually a little bit more ahead of the curve on that. I think he's a pretty accepting guy, and even if he gets mad, he'll accept that that's reality or whatever. But I think there are a lot of places where there's not room for somebody to make that call, at least in my experience in dealing with people. And yeah, another question. Yeah. So he asked if I'm like friendly with my employer and if he knew all the stuff that I had going on in the background, and he definitely did. I tend to be a pretty open person in that situation where my decisions are affecting my boss or my coworkers or stuff like that. I tend to be like, well, I got some stuff going on. I think everybody in the company was aware that I had stuff going on, but nobody really knew how to broach the subject in the moment. Like if I bring it up, that's one thing, right? But for somebody to come up to the foreman and be like, hey man, it seems like you might be processing some emotional information and having difficulty today. Like, is there anything I can do to help? That's a big bridge to gap, or a big gap to bridge rather. I think that everybody has the capacity to have those conversations, and I think that it's just that awkward moment of like, so like saying the word love on a TCIA stage, that was hard for me today. I don't know if it showed. That was hard for me to get to the point where I'm talking about this as, love and exchange of emotions and all that. And I think it's the same kind of thing where it's just hard to get across that one moment. It's that moment of fear, right? It's like being a preteen and going to talk to somebody that you think is attractive, that you just have to get over that moment of fear that's holding you back from the other side, which is going to talk to that attractive person or really connecting to the person in front of you and figuring out what's going on in their life and figuring out whether they should run a chainsaw today or whatever. I think that's the hard part. Questions?
The experience you described, I've been in similar situations where I was the lead on a crew and I felt like it was my job to just get it done and find a way and push through. And not to put words in your mouth, but it seems like sometimes the high performer can be the weakest link because we don't have redundancy and we start to take on extra burden and we won't or don't feel like we have the opportunity to hand it off to somebody without letting down our employer or not getting our job done.
Right. So what he was saying was like that situation was really familiar to him where he felt like he was the one in charge and not able to drop the ball due to letting down your employer or letting down your coworkers or whatever. And I think that's huge. Like I was at the company I was at for 10 years. So I'd known this guy. I'd had a kid while I was there. He had 2 kids while I was there. We knew each other's families. Christmas dinner every year. Like we were friendly. I still consider him a friend. We didn't see each other much, but I was there for 10 years. When that relationship ended, like when I left that company, I felt like I got divorced, man. Like you talk about like letting down your employer. Like that was a very serious thing for me. Like I definitely put my employer's well-being, my company's well-being before my family's at points. Like I missed my kids are 12 and 9 now, and I missed large swaths of their development and early life because I was stuck in the system that company entailed, and that's not my employer's fault. That's not the company's fault necessarily. That's evolution. Like that's just where it landed. And I was of the mindset that I just needed to make Lim Walker do well, and that was going to be it. That was all I needed to do. I just needed to stick with this company and make it do well, and everything else would follow. Yeah, man.
Like if I turned down a tree or I did something, the crew would know to see that their leader did that, so I can tell him if I'm not comfortable with something. You know what I mean? So me being the leader and breaking that barrier, as the guys below me,
lead by example.
They can tell me they don't want to run the ship or they can.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And what he was saying was he found when he started leading crew that when he took that leap to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, that empowered the people below him in the business to say the same thing. It makes it okay to have that conversation. So, as a crew leader, taking that moment, or a business owner, taking that moment to say, hey man, how you doing? Or hey lady, how you doing? Or just hey y'all, I don't know, whatever, I'm sorry. I get stuck in that stuff. So I think you taking that moment to say, how are you? Like, legit, how's it going? Like, how's the wife, how's the kids, how's your girlfriend, whatever. Like, again, that opens up that conversation the other way too. Like, obviously he's open to it. He started this conversation, right? I saw Nancy, Rob, and then Mike.
One of the things I'm finding being left out of the conversation is the client.
Yeah.
My experience has been, and this just happened last week, the scenario was that half the top of the beach had blown out, large cavity. It looked like we could rig it down. This family had a special needs child who just loved watching us work.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I had to do was tell her, when Charlie comes home, let us know, make sure he stays back. She said, great, thank you very much. It's better firstborn than trying to pull him back in.
Right.
I get up there, I look at the cavity, and I could see tension wood that was strained and, issues that just left me with the feeling that, no, this wasn't a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
We have other alternatives. We have the spider lift we bring in. When I came down, first thing I did was I went to her door, knocked on the door, and I explained the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Her comment to me was, thank you. Thank you for not having a catastrophe in my yard and my son coming home to it.
Yeah.
And that just reinforced, because I've done that before, how important it is to the customer that everything goes well.
Yes.
That the last thing they need or want happening on their property is an ambulance pulling up.
Right.
This
and
welcome to Rumpelstiltskin.
Right. I don't know if everybody read that, but what he was saying was he had a beach, the top flats in it, and it looked initially like they could climb it and rig it out. And the family in the home had a special needs child who was very excited about seeing the tree work and all this stuff. And so when Rob went up and checked it, it suddenly became apparent that he couldn't rig it out and they needed to make it spider lift or something. He said that when he went to go check in with the customer, she was like, thank you so much for not pushing it and having an accident in my yard. And I think that is really important. That's not even a part of it that had occurred to me for this conversation, but that is huge. Like, I can't count the number of times I've gotten compliments from customers who are like, gosh, your crew just communicates so well. You're all talking to each other and laughing and enjoying each other, and so much of that, I think that culture, and that's really down to hiring and training, is having a crew that you actually enjoy. So much of that culture impacts safety culture, because if you have a tight-knit crew, you all give a shit about each other. You all want to make sure that everybody comes home. And I think customers see that, and I think that gets you more work.
You said you weren't necessarily in the state of mind that day to be able to notice or realize it and figure it out, and your crew at the time, as well as the owners who may have or may not have talked to you that day, didn't really notice it. We're, like you said, maybe just nervous about coming up to you and bringing that up.
Yeah.
Besides from like now, like you said, you're a little bit more jovial with your crew, you're conversing more with your crew. What else have you done to make sure that you're like empowering your crew to be able to not only notice that, but to bring it up and the people around you? Are you doing anything more specific, or are you just kind of?
I don't have any specific advice, and I think it's important to have that conversation. Absolutely. And I think that it's one of those situational things where, like when I do aerial rescue training, I don't like to tell people, like, this is how you get somebody out of a tree. I like to say, like, here's a technique that works for me to get somebody out of a tree. You have different stuff in your toolbox, you have different skills, you have different, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can give you this information, and I want you to take it back to your crew and figure out how it works for you, how you can apply that. And I think it's kind of a similar situation where I think the way I've changed in the last year is that I'm no longer pussyfooting around things. When people ask me how I'm doing, I tell them I'm okay. You know, I'm not perfect. This is not, the last year I haven't been in an ideal place. So people ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, I'm all right. I'm doing okay. I don't say great, unless I'm having a really good day. And I think that's how I try to do it. Is I try to be as open and honest with everybody as I can, and that's part of why I'm standing up here in front of all you guys. Is practice. I think I'm just trying to be that open and honest everywhere, and I think it's really important that like you were saying, leading by example. That's all I can do. Is I can't change the way that you're interact with me. I can't change. I can only change my behavior. So if I have the impression that that Steve is nervous about coming to me to talk to me about whether I'm okay at work or not, the only way I can change that is to have open lines of communication about everything. And not to say there's not stuff you don't talk about with your coworkers, but you spend so much time with your coworkers. You spend more time, like the time guy was breaking down like how much time you spend here and there, and I'm like, most of your time is at work in our society, and those people matter to you. Those people are a family to you, even if you don't like them. I mean, who likes all of their family? Nobody. That's it. Like you're never gonna like all of your family, and tree work is the same. It's just a different family. Yeah, so what he was saying was was there anybody on the crew that could have noticed that and taken over, or was I the only person that could do that aspect of the work? Definitely, I think definitely Kate, my friend who got hurt, she definitely could have done what I was doing. It would have taken a little longer, that's the production. We got a 3-hour drive, we got this and that, there's poop all over the yard, we got to get out of here as quickly as possible. Let's be out, Yes, the answer is yes, but again, we weren't having those conversations, and I think a lot of that is on me. I don't think I can push that off on my employer for setting up that culture, because I think the culture was decent. It's not perfect, but it was decent. I don't think I can push that off on my coworkers for not noticing. I think I have to own that. I get pretty unapproachable when I'm in a bad place. I go into beast mode. I'm not happy. I'm in pain, and I want to get through as much of this as possible, as fast as possible. Get out of my way. And that doesn't make for an easy conversation approach for Steve, who's concerned about my well-being, and everybody else is on the crew or whatever, this fucking mad bull in front of him.
Yeah, I think arborists are in a bit of a unique place because we tend to get obsessed with tree work. A lot of us.
It's a hobby too.
It's a hobby.
It's a lifestyle. I identify as arborist.
I was going through some similar things last summer, and my way to deal with that was to try to go to work and work really fast and hard and intense as a therapy to get me through my shift. Probably wasn't a good idea.
Not every day, anyway.
Not every day. Yeah, some days it was a really bad idea. But it's tough because you gotta I don't know where that plays in, but I think it's somewhat unique to us in a way.
Yeah. Jeff was saying that he's had a similar experience of life experience to me in the last couple of years, going through stuff, and adulting hard, and that we are in an interesting position because our job is not just a job. how many of you could do something else? There's still no. We are like it is a specific place. There's not a lot of industries I don't think that have this love of this work and this connection to this work and you know. I think it's really easy to use tree work as therapy, and I think there's just a fine line. It's just, and again, like open communication is the only way to bridge that fine line. I think you're the, yeah, you. How do I engage a new hire?
How do you engage a new hire? How do you get them to buy into the
So the company I used to work at, and I can't take any credit for this practice, this was all my employer, the company I used to work at did trial days where the owner of the company would interview this person and vet them in the first place, and then he'd have them come to a trial day, and everybody in the company got to vote on whether this person was unapplicable. This is probably not a good hiring practice, I shouldn't say this out loud. Anyway, we all got to vote on whether we liked this person or thought they would fit in. And in all honesty, that does a lot. In my mind, that does a lot because it's like a pre-vetting process where this person seems interested, this person seems like they can hang with the crew, and they click okay, and you know, or it's not quite right, but we think we think it'll work because we're not totally unreasonable. And you just kind of have to trial by fire them. I mean, you just have to. Again, like these hard conversations, you just have to have them. Like you just have to start having them, and the minute the new hire flinches, talk to them about why they flinch.
I think it's a lot of your attitude too. You got to show them the work attitude.
Absolutely, yeah.
Assimilate them into your culture.
Exactly, yeah. The culture should be established.
They're going to either catch on or they're not.
Yeah, exactly. And that can go for communication skills, that can go for work practices, that can go for, I don't know, hygiene, like any of it. And any of the things that factor into you meshing well with the people around you. Yeah. They went in the water, yeah. So he was asking, like, so what are we wipe the slate clean when we walk onto the job or in the shop or whatever in the morning? Like, you know, being in that moment, not being and leaving work, leaving life at home and going to work, and you have your work life. I think that's a big part of it. You know, I certainly don't encourage people to like, you know, shut that door. You know, you don't want to go to work and just shut everything off and not worry about it. But you know, I think separation of work brain and home brain should be, it needs to be there to some degree. I think you need to be aware of how you're feeling and acknowledging and honest with yourself and the people around you about how you're feeling. But you know, like if you're going to be at work, be at work. And that's the problem that I ran into on that day when I hurt Kate, is that I didn't hurt her, but she got hurt as a result of my actions. I wasn't at work. I was trying to get out of work as fast as possible so that I didn't have to feel the way I was feeling at work. Because I couldn't stop the way I was feeling. I couldn't stop my brain from doing what it was doing. I couldn't stop being super angry and aggressive and a lot of stuff. So I wasn't at work. My body was at work, and like my body knows how to do the tree work, but my brain wasn't there. My brain was in emotional turmoil land and elsewhere. So I think I wouldn't say wipe the slate clean, but like definitely have some compartmentalization of work and home and separate it a bit. For me, really the takeaway, my little last closing line here, which we're over time anyway. So I feel like as an industry we need to start changing the way that we value the human components of our industry. And I think that that's something that's coming up more and more in all aspects of our industry, like even like the fellow whose name I should remember, who was talking about time across the way. He was actually hitting a lot of the points that I'm hitting in here in different ways. I don't think that this session is like pushing forward the industry or anything, but I am trying to start a different conversation or a different approach to the conversation that I haven't heard and I want to hear more of. Yeah, any more? I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is like all of this stuff that everybody's going through. Like I can't count the number of people who I've openly communicated the fact that I feel like dog shit or whatever on a given day, week, or month. And they come right back to me and they're like, oh man, like I was there 2 weeks ago, I was there last year. Everybody's going through this stuff. We're all human, none of us know how to work, there's no instruction manual, everybody's parents sucked. Like we're all just flailing away trying to figure out how to get through the day and not look like we're flailing away trying to get through the day. That's it. Yeah. Because that's a line of communication that is closed now.
Yeah, I gotta find a way to keep that open.
Yeah.
So thanks.
And thank you. I appreciate that, man. I really do. I think those, what you're saying was like, you're the middleman on that line of communication. If you got your boss above you and you got crew below you, I think that is a lot of where that breakdown in communication at the company I was working at was happening, was where I wasn't comfortable having those conversations fully with my employer, and so nobody else was having those conversations with me, and they just didn't go anywhere. They weren't had. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Any more questions?
Yeah, you said that your words were that you know, I'm sure this talk is actually like pushing the industry forward, but I actually disagree, because I think that if the topic you're getting on, which is essentially love that promotes the culture of safety, that if that grows, then so does the industry, because if we all work safer and have less accidents, less incidents, then that not only improves the work environment, but also public perception, and it goes on and on to the giant intangible thing of the industry itself.
That's the way. Yeah, here's hoping. Yeah, thanks, bro. So, any more questions, or? Oh yeah, a couple. Okay, Jim, you were first. Yeah.
What is your insight and thoughts on getting the new generation to buy into safety that we already know that we want to have?
That's funny. I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. Gosh, what was that conversation? I think I'm speaking as a male in this answer right now, because I think, especially as men, there's a kind of a emotional awakening happening societally right now, where I think that the younger people that are coming into our industry are actually in a better place to have conversations like this and be open to open lines of communication and talk of these situations. Like, I think there's actually a really big shift happening right now, societally on one level, but in our industry. Like, I feel like I'm having these conversations with people more and more, and it's not just because I'm bitching and moaning to people about my marital problems. Like, it's because like we're all just a little more open, and I think that the more perspectives and ideas that we're all exposed to, the more that grows. So I really think that it's getting easier and easier to engage the new hires in this thought process, in this safety culture, I think. Maybe. Another question? Another game winner? Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of old school.
Yeah.
I've been in tree care for over 20 years. I'm an owner.
Yeah.
You tell me you need to take off, and I say, okay, those guys are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid today.
Yeah.
So, but you just opened up a new kind of thing with me. One of my guys told me, you know, kind of had the, hey, what would you do different, whatever. He goes, you don't tell us we do good enough. I go, because you're coming back to work the next day and you're still hired, you're doing good. So that's my culture.
That's your pat on the back, yeah, right.
So now it's like, I'm not a stroker. I'm
Yeah.
really not. And my wife told me, you got to be softer with these guys.
Right, yeah.
And I'm used to working with older guys who like,
Don't want
very
to
gruff, yeah. We don't have feelings,
Yeah,
you
they're
know?
not there. I lost mine.
And what I'm seeing now, and I talked to my wife about this with the show this year, there's a whole new culture coming into tree care. And us older guys have to go with it. You had the urban loggers that became arborists.
Yep.
Now you have the arborists with feelings.
Yeah.
And it's a whole new world. It really is. Not a bad world, it's a nice thing.
It's all new. But and that's like, I think that's the importance for you as an owner.
Yes.
Like, ask them how they're doing in the morning.
I had a guy, he
You know?
didn't show up for 3 days.
Yeah.
Didn't know if he was live, contacted
Right.
his dad, or whatever. I know he's going through a rehab program.
Yeah.
So, had to pull him aside. He's in a bad place.
Yeah.
How can we help you out?
Let's talk. Yeah.
And that's something 10 years ago would never happen.
Wouldn't happen.
It would have been
Yeah.
37.
Bye-bye. Yeah. And that's awesome. Good for you. That's the thing, is like, I don't envy an owner's position through these conversations. I don't envy an owner's position just in being responsible for all of these lives that you're responsible for. I recognize that that's not easy, and asking for an emotional level of connection is just one more gap to bridge. But I think that overall, like Eric was saying, overall over time, this is trying to advance safety culture. This is trying to minimize the amount of accidents that we have, and making sure that they're just those days when shit goes sideways and you can't help it, those days when the tree explodes and you didn't expect it or whatever, because that happens. Yeah. Anyway, any more questions, or, where? There you go. Is there no?
I challenge you on your notion of unachievable goal. Paul McNeil, CEO of Alcoa, 41,000 employees worldwide.
Yeah.
When he started, he first talked to the investment community about safety. He gave over an hour-long presentation on safety to the investment community. They walked out of that and they said, sell. The first year, because he took the stance of safety, and it's not safety first,
Right.
it's safety.
Period.
Period. Our goal is 0 fatalities. And when one of his managers challenges him on that, said, look, that's admirable, but it's not realistic.
Right.
Like 1.25, maybe we can do 1.
Mm-hmm.
He said, tell you what, go out and find that one volunteer for me.
Yeah.
If you can find that volunteer, then
Great.
okay,
There's your one.
there's your 1. But otherwise, no, our goal
Is 0.
is 0.
Yeah.
Whether we achieve it or not.
Right.
And he got pretty high. I think he got down to 0.15 fatalities
Yeah.
a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
A 41,000 employee company.
As soon as that came out of my mouth, I was like, I don't think it's a achievable goal. I was like, somebody's gonna eat me on that one. I'm glad it was you. You're nice. Yeah.
you used the term, Max, safety culture, and I might suggest that safety is important, but culture is the more important word.
Absolutely.
You know, and the gentleman back here commented as being a business owner, and I mean, how many of us have heard the challenges or experienced the challenges of finding good quality people, of retaining good employees?
Harder.
And it's culture. I mean, this is the coolest job in the world.
Yeah.
It's on us as business owners, as business leaders, to create the coolest companies in the world that they'd want to stay and work for, because it's a hard-ass job.
Yeah.
And you're working with tough people,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean we don't have hearts. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean we don't have hearts. And so thank you for sharing what you have. This is really important.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks all for sitting through it. Are there any more questions? Hands I missed or? No? Okay. Cool. That's all I got. And thanks.
Yeah, baby.
So I got CEUs. Advise there is 5 minutes left and give ISA CEU code.
All right, so that's
ISA
Max
CEU
Swan.
code is TC
I'm super proud of you.